Hello everyone and welcome back to another Scrap Mechanic video. I've got a fantastic vehicle to show you today. Doesn't have a name at the moment. By the time I put this video out though, I'll probably come up with a name. Some sort of two-stage car or a folding car or something like that. I really don't know what to call this thing. But basically it's got some moving parts and some mechanisms to it. It also drives pretty well and it houses 4 people. But another thing that I do want to point out is that this thing doesn't look too bad as well. I think I've got a long way to go with making things look good, but we've moved away from using the basic blocks and I've been using some of these orange parts right here, the I-beams, and I think it ends up looking pretty cool. Now there's one oversight. I didn't really think of a way to put a proper entrance on, so we've got to hop in here at the back. And that engine, or the two of them, is very loud. And what's weird is that a moment ago, when I was warming up to record, they weren't making any sound. And now I can't stop them making sound, even if I turn them off. It's so weird. Anyway, let's hop in the driver's seat. You can see we've got room for 3 friends as well. Absolutely awesome. And what we have is front wheel drive and front wheel steering. Now, like some of the other vehicles I've made, if you saw the live stream that we did recently, or some of the other videos, I've added 2 bearings on there, so the steering is really good and easy to deal with. And because of the weight of this vehicle, it's actually really stable and easy to get around. So we're going to drive up to the top of this mountain and then come back down again. And it's just a simple, easy drive. I've had no problems with it at all. However, as I said, this thing has some tricks up its sleeve, as it can go into a couple of different states. Let's get around the corner here and get up to the top. This is such a lovely looking game. I think this might be a little bit too steep for it. We might have to turn up the engine power a little bit right here. But it does look fantastic. And now we're sort of up here in the top area. So we're going to park the car in a second, and I'm going to show you the multiple states that you can put this thing in. Well, technically it's just 2 states. Right, let's get on the path here where it's nice and flat. Let's reverse up a little bit, and we're going to park right here. So we're going to hop out of this thing. One thing I've got to admit is that these switches that I put in aren't in the best of positions. Of course, I could easily move them around. If we go over to this side and press this button, then what's that? The rails on the side prop it off of the ground. This is like a parked mode. Now this was originally going to work in junction with the button on the other side. They were going to both be powered by one thing, but I decided to separate it for this video. So if we press this one, you'll see that the wheels actually tuck in, which is absolutely amazing. You can see at the back here. Is it me? Oh, okay, it's a little bit finicky. That one was lower for a second. Yeah, they did look odd. And at the front here as well, you can see the wheels have been tucked in. So the idea was that you would press this, the wheels would tuck in, and then those would prop out on the side. And now you'd have a fully parked car, which is just fantastic. I love it. It looks so cool. And let's just press that again. So if I had wired them up to the same button, they would have looked something like this. It would have done that. Then these wheels would have popped back out again when we press the one on the other side. And then you're good to go driving again. Now, you can see we've got 2 engines at the back here. I also wanted to put in 4-wheel drive, and when we switch to this thing, yep, a lot of stuff going on here. I'll come back to that in a moment. By the way, in this video I do want to give you some tips as to how to make this when you start playing Scrap Mechanic. It's not going to be a tutorial, more of some pointers, because this took me about 2.5 hours plus a little bit of time yesterday when I was messing around with it to make. And I've got a lot of things to say about it. So the other thing that I wanted to do was to make this engine at the back a rear wheel drive. So you can see it's controlled by one of the switches at the front, which actually controls 2 things at the moment, which is not what it should do. If we hook this engine up here, I'll actually, unhook the one down the front and show you. But basically, this will not free spin if you've got it hooked up to an engine and the engine is turned off. So my idea was that the switch on the left-hand side would put it into 4-wheel drive, and I guess you probably need like a second set of wheels, and they need to be put down onto the level with the other wheels in order to turn a vehicle into a 4-wheel drive, right? But unfortunately you can't do it that way, so you have to let them spin on their own, and that's why there's 2 engines at the back. And isn't it just fantastic? I know you want to see it again, so let's do it. Boom, up it goes. And when I recorded like a while ago while I was warming up, it actually did a backflip, but I don't know how to... Oh, there you go, you saw it. So that, what it did before is it sort of like flipped all the way over when it hit itself, which is a little bit strange. Let's see if we can get it to do that again. That was funny. And let's have a closer look at the way the wheels fold up as well. Yeah, look, it tries and pushes itself over. That is silly. It's just because I put this too close to that bit there. And actually, that's supposed to be attached on this side. Huh, I kind of put that in the wrong position. Let's correct that. So where that was before was also suppressing the wheels and pushing them in a little bit, which is probably why it did a flip. And that makes me think you could probably use these springs and rotating blocks with the springs on, like into other blocks, to make it like a machine that flips. That's something I'm going to try and do. Anyway, enough with the silliness. Let's unravel the wheels again. And then let's bring in our little arms on the side. It is so very cool, isn't it? I love it. And there's going to be so much more advanced stuff that we'll learn to do in the future. Anyway, what we're going to do right now is drive back down the hill, and I'm going to find the one that I made previously. Like, I made a sort of test one. I think it like half works. And I wanted to show you that. And then we'll discuss how I made this, and I'll give you some pointers and tips on how to make a vehicle like this, because it can be quite the headache. You've got to keep a few things in mind. I gotta say it, this vehicle drives really well, and that partially depends on the driver. I'm not a good driver with driving games, so I'd say it checks out. Here is the original one. It looks so silly. I've forgotten how bad this looked. So tip number one is give yourself plenty of space. What I did here was start off with something relatively small, and then I had to sort of attach this thing and put the driver's seat up the top. So that looks ridiculous. Tip number two is use some nice looking materials. Don't be afraid to play around with those. This thing looks ugly. Let's press the button to unravel it. As you can see, it does everything in one action. It's a little bit cooler than this one in some regards, I think. It just looks awful. Yeah, there you go. And if we hop up the top here, we can actually drive this thing, but it's got too much engine power, and it loves to do wheelies as well. Let's drive it around. Oh no, no, don't do that. Yep, go back down. That's good. Okay, and you can see some bits over here that have fallen off as well of the one that I built back there. So that's something else that I want to give you some tips about. Alright, so let's go over how these mechanisms work. I haven't got a good way of describing how to get these bearings that you build to, you know, come out into the position that you want, other than sort of visualize where it's going to move to. So I started off with these two blocks, and it's attached to this one on this side, so we got the bearing there. I visualize that it's going to, you know, roll out to the side, and then that means that when this one here rolls down, it's going to be in that position that you saw, like that. So you've got to try and visualize it to make it happen. Yes. What would be the next tip? Okay, I'm a little bit more prepared now. I've made a little list of things to give you tips about. Let's also do this again. I love watching it animate. It's so cool. So my first and probably most important thing is don't build onto moving parts. So once you've attached something like this, what I did is I started building the front off of those same blocks. You always want to build off of the static blocks. If you move off of the moving parts, they're going to be attached to that. And then what I found is I'd go in, I'd try and replace some of the parts that were attached to the moving parts, and then, you know, the front bit here would get separated from the entire contraption, which is what you saw over there. So you must always build off of your static parts. So keep it in mind, whenever you've got a moving part, you don't want to build off of it. So let's say we want to put something like in this position. That would be the correct place of putting it, because it's then attached to this block. If we were facing this block right here, it would be attached to the moving part, and then we'd have to take it off and put it back on again. My next tip is to give yourself lots and lots of space. I got kind of lucky here because I didn't really give myself too much space, but I managed to make it work. So we've got all of our seats in, but everything is a little bit close together, and that kind of makes it hard to press some of the buttons sometimes, as these things are all next to each other. You often end up like sitting in the seat here when you're trying to press the button at the front, which isn't good, of course. The other tip is to make sure that your controllers that control these things have a permanent place. So don't put it down temporarily and start messing around with connecting it to these things. Find a location that's going to be permanent, that it can stay on, and then put it there. You see, my mistake is that this was my permanent place at the front here, but then the beam behind it was attached to the moving part on the side. So originally when this thing opened up, it opened up the front as well. And I think my last couple of tips would be, don't try and build this all in one go. Like, figure it out bit by bit. make sure the bit that you've built is solid before you rush into building the rest of it, because what you'll often find is as you're trying to make this thing, you'll need to go back and tweak and adjust something you did earlier, and if you've made a copy of all of these like bars on the sides or the wheels, then you've got to go and do that all over again, which can be quite time consuming. I guess my last tip is to be very careful when using this connection tool. If we have a look at the number order here, you can see like that one there is number 8, and originally it was 1, 2, and I think 3 and 4 were on this side, and it's all over the place at the moment. 3 and 4 is back there, 5 and 6. So you know, you can very easily drag from this button to that thing and accidentally hit this thing here and undo your connection, which means you've got to go back in and redo all of this. And another tip for you, actually, that I found made this very easy, is if you look at this, these are all 90 in the positive, and it doesn't really matter if you choose the positive or the negative, because it's all relative when you can choose what way this goes. Like, you can right click to change it. So when visualizing, just say inside this interface we're going to make everything go positive, then you can sort of see where it's going to turn. So by looking at that, we can see that the first bit will rotate it to the outside, which is what we want, and then that the second bit would also rotate this end around to that side, which is what we want. So then, instead of having to remember is it negative or positive in here, you can simply rotate it over on this side, which makes life a lot easier. So it wouldn't be a proper Scrap Mechanic vehicle video without driving off of a cliff, would it? Everyone loves to do it. And the one I did a moment ago was really lame, and so it looks like this one will be as well. Yep, worst driving off of a cliff ever. And it looks like we're stuck. Oh no, here we go. Down we go, and no surprise. Awful backflip, terrible camera angle. What a great way to end this video. If you enjoyed it, please do leave it a like. As always, thank you for your support. If you're new here on the channel, then subscribe for more Scrap Mechanic videos. And check out the other ones that we've done already. Links are on your screen and in the description box. That's it from me. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.